Please note that though this is a spoiler-free review of the subject, I do spoil the series and/or franchise leading up to this particular entry. I either have or will cover other parts of this franchise, and this video either is or will be linked below. I'm not going to restate here what I did or will say in the other video. These videos get long enough as it is. Put off by how long this video is, don't worry, I try to jam-pack my videos with as much content and as much detail as I possibly can. Anything I feel I can comment on and that I feel you might be interested in, I pretty much put in the video. I try not to repeat myself and talk fairly fast. Spider-Man Homecoming 3D movie review. Starting with the plot. Peter Parker tries to juggle being a teenage high schooler, for once played by someone of just about the right age, with being a superhero. So, somewhat like Spider-Man 2, but with high school in place of college and a job. His mentor, Tony Stark, wants him to slow down, get more experience before going full superhero, but the Vulture starts smuggling dangerous weapons, and Peter has to stop him. Now, in the Raimi trilogy, it took 3 movies to get overloaded with content. The Amazing Spider-Man, they went as overloaded as Raimi 3 was in movie 2, and I'm really happy to say that this one is not an overloaded film. I was kind of worried, especially, this is a proper solo movie. It's not too busy setting up what's coming up in the franchise, as the MCU has been doing kind of since the very start, and then getting especially bad near the end of Phase 2 with Avengers Age of Ultron. Now, one of the first scenes is Spidey's perspective on the climactic airport fight of Civil War, and he did indeed record, parts. As far as I could tell, he took like little breaks. He wasn't recording while fighting, but he took brief little breaks to, vlog his thoughts. But, I saw some people speculate that he actually live streamed that. He did not, and in fact, no one sees that footage. Happy and Tony very briefly exchanging, and there's no, like, I don't know, should we let him keep... No, Happy literally just says, don't worry, I'm deleting the content on there, don't worry. And yeah, coming back from that fight, he has real trouble just doing high school. He feels like he should now start to become an Avenger. And instead he kind of has to be the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man, stopping muggers and robbers, giving old ladies directions. He also helps out whenever a phone is hanged up on, if his theme song is to be believed. And the Vulture appears, and Peter feels like he's the one who should be stopping the Vulture. Finally, a Spider-Man, so where the first solo movie is not the origin story. I greatly appreciate, not only is this the first solo movie of a comic book character where the movie itself is not an origin story, it's a Spider-Man first movie in a new continuity, which isn't an origin story. That, third time really was the charm. Third continuity, I watched this on my birthday. It made an amazing birthday present. Now, to briefly give, perspective, Spider-Man's the first comic book I ever read at the start of my teenage years, and he remains my favorite. I especially read classic and early 90s Spider-Man. Now, I have watched every MCU movie, and except for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, since I rarely watch anything in theaters more than once, and it's so recent, so no copy, at least twice each. And I have watched every movie past 2002 of Spider-Man, as well as Daredevil and Elektra, at least twice each. And in preparation for this, over the last few weeks, I rewatched Spider-Man 1 through 3, The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, Iron Man 1 and 3. Iron Man 2 was not as bad as I remember it being. Daredevil movie, Elektra, Darkman, Captain America Civil War. And I know I've said this before, but the Spider-Man 3 riff tracks really is amazing. So the Dark Knight 1 and the Heroes 1. There was at least one too many ones in there. I'm excited. As expected, I love this far more than Raimi's Spider-Man, portrayed by Tobey Maguire, who moped on his moped. Excuse me for a minute. Well, that's better. Now, Homecoming is a dumb subtitle, and yes, it does, it in part refers to the fact that Spidey has come home to Marvel, the studio now, in, the publisher didn't lose him. And yes, Homecoming takes place at one point in this movie, but yeah, nevertheless, if they are going to keep using Silent Hill sequel titles, let's see, we've had 2 Spider-Man Origins, there's enough crying in several of these to justify using the subtitle Downpour. Shattered Memories is like if you put on Amazing 1 for the first time, expecting it to be Raimi Man 1. Like, I remember this very differently. So we've still got coming up The Room and possibly a canceled Spider-Men. And the movie is not an R, because then Tom Holland himself would just barely be able to go see it. Now, I'm relieved to be able to say this does not spam with great power comes great responsibility, but it is about that. It kind of, I saw someone else point out that basically they don't say it, but they kind of show it. It's because that is a really big part of Spider-Man, and yeah, this movie is a lot about Peter accepting the responsibility and really accepting what comes with, all 3 of these continuities, and the Raimi continuity, it legitimately was just they literally have Uncle Ben say it, and say it again and again and again, and then they slightly rewrite it for The Amazing Spider-Man, and then in Civil War you hear this continuity's version of that, and Now, the other movies, kind of make New York either look very good or very bad. I suppose in this one, you don't see the city itself and like regular people from it quite enough that you could say whether it makes the people makes it look good or bad. I guess you have the rude New Yorker kind of, They like to argue and get into verbal fights. You have that a little bit. And, you know, the 60s cartoon theme, of course, shows up in some form. You know, in Rain Man 1, it's a street singer. In Rain Man 2, it's a street singer. And in Amazing 2, it's a ringtone. In this, they basically play a version of it in when the Marvel logo plays, and yeah, greatly appreciated. And I am really glad that we're seemingly past spy stuff with Peter Parker's parents, like in Amazing 1 and 2. That Peter's father was a very secretive man, and Peter Postbite became a very secretive boy. I forget who, someone recently said it or wrote it. I picked it up in a recent review, certainly. Part of the point of Peter Parker is that it could happen to anyone. It's not that his parents were spies and this. No, it's just it happened to him, so it could happen to you. It's, you know, somewhat like with Alien, yeah. Now, most people seem to really love this film. A few do really hate it. I understand both perspectives. Personally, I really love it. Now, moving on to notes taken during viewing. And before I even get out the notepad, just briefly on the 3D, I wouldn't go for the 3D. I barely noticed it. As others have pointed out, I believe at least Film Brain pointed out, there are a few really dark scenes that make it very difficult to see because the 3D glasses darken it further. And there's just, there's like once or twice where I noticed that the drone was kind of flying out, and there is sometimes some depth to it, but I didn't feel like it really added much. There might have been depth a lot of the time, and it just didn't really grab me the way that a good 3D presentation really does. I'm not sure that it's really filmed with the idea that it was gonna, you know, this is something that's gonna look really good in 3D. Now, the movie takes 2 hours and 2 minutes, so just if anybody starts to tell you, oh man, this movie is like over 2 hours, just barely, just cut them off, say, no, you full of crap, you didn't pay attention. The movie is 2 hours and 2 minutes if you don't count the end credits. And I'm sorry, end credits, definitely stay through them, but no, it's not the same as sitting through a longer movie, because the moment the end credits start up, the lights come on, everybody calms down, you can, you know, talk openly with other people, because everybody shuts up anyway when the mid and post credit scenes come on. Something I didn't necessarily notice as much, like it was more something that struck me after the movie was over. There aren't that many quips by Peter. I feel like that's something that the Amazing movies got, you know, had down better. He's relatively talky while in the suit. Yeah, he's quite talky, but a lot of the talking isn't to others, and he definitely does, you know, he's got the awkwardness, and he will sometimes make cranks at the people he stops and such, but not quite as much. And there's a lot of time where he's not directly, you know, or sometimes he'll spend a little while on a single criminal or a small group of criminals, rather than, you know, you don't see him stop like a dozen criminals in this the way you do in several of the others. And yes, this is, in my opinion, the best solo Spider-Man movie that, yeah, of the six. I just watched the midnight, was it live screen? Yeah, midnight screening with Brad Jones. I forget the friend's last name, but Dave was also on it. Why did Dave hate this movie? And I did notice, and maybe you will too, even if I didn't bring it up, when the movie starts, you get the Sony logo and the Paramount logo, and then the movie starts. And I was like, are they not gonna show the Marvel? Is this like part of that deal that they made, along with Kevin Feige, you know, trying desperately not to look like he's panicking during interviews, that the Marvel, but it does come up. It doesn't right away. It comes up after one or two scenes. Keaton is actually, yes, the first major character we see, and the first scene or two, he has several minutes of screen time, and you really get a sense of who he is, and that he's really passionate about. This is his. He works with this salvaging, and it means a lot to him. And actually, that is, we right away see Tony Stark muscling in on that, although not in person. But, yeah. Adrian, I want to say, Adrian Toomes is the character's name. I'm going to go with Atum. Atum is just the kind of boss you want. Like, he catches one of the guys, like, doing it completely wrong, and he's like, no, what are you doing? He's like, no, dude, look, you gotta do it like this. Okay, there you go. And he moves on to the next, and just, yeah. And he's not that, like, he's not some big monster. He's a human being. And there's when Tony Stark's people muscle in on the appropriate vulture kind of business, the scavenging, I almost said scaffolding, Toomes Atum says some very morbid jokes, which I found really inappropriate. He says, but I have a family, and these guys who work for me, they have families. And, like, and they're just like, bureaucratic. I think, if you have a problem, you should talk to our superiors about it. And he explains, I bought trucks in order to be able to move all this stuff. And, this was going to be my big thing. And then one of these guys who works for, I keep almost saying, I think I haven't said it yet, Damage Control is Tony Stark's company that's going to salvage. And this guy, he's like, maybe next time you shouldn't get ahead of yourself. You shouldn't step outside your bounds, something like that. And just, I'm not going to say exactly what happens following that, but I would be lying if I didn't take just a tiny little bit of enjoyment from what happens to the guy who says it. And we get to see Vulture in the full costume just a few minutes into the movie. And it's another one of these where thankfully the villain is present from the very start. he's there throughout the whole movie. It's not one of these MCU movies where the villain, especially the first Solo movie, where the villain shows up way late into the, yeah, or only starts doing anything way late. And I already mentioned that you see Peter recording the Civil War, the airport, right before the airport fight. He actually records from basically when he first finds out that he's going there, and it's like Happy goes to pick him up and takes him on the private jet, and, and he's actually, Peter, like, films as he's being driven by Happy, who, he is a driver, a chauffeur, so, and he only has 3 rules, and one of them is don't narrate. Peter is like recording himself, and he's like narrating in like a spooky film, like, this is the first, and Happy's like, you're not gonna get to show this to anyone. Why are you doing that? Because it's fun. And he's like, he talks when in the hotel, and both before and after the fight, he talks in the hotel. And actually, after the fight, he's like, he's super excited. So he's standing there, he's speed talking and explaining all this stuff. And then Happy comes in and knocks on the door. He's like, oh, yeah, sure, what's up? We have thin walls. He talks very fast for a lot of it. At times faster than my brain processes language. And, yeah, after he comes back and he has to go to school, the school day feels endless. Like, he's headed to the thing. Tony says, don't call us, we'll call you. And Peter doesn't really accept that. He thinks, no, it's fine, I'm just gonna call him, and he's gonna, and so he texts Happy, I'll be off school at 14:45, and then, I'll be up for any superhero stuff, if, and through the rest, we get like this short montage, just short little bits of the school day. And he keeps checking the watch every time he's in class. He just checks the watch. It's not quite there yet, and he's so relieved when it is 14:45. And he does what every single one of these movies Spider-Man do. He pulls some of his Spider-Man moves before putting on the suit. And Peter starts neglecting high school stuff, and he actually, he says that he has to quit this decathlon thing, and several of the others are like unhappy about that, and I'm not 100. I'm only gonna say this one. I'm gonna try to only say this once because I'm probably gonna mispronounce it. Zendaya, is that how you say it? Her character Michelle I quite liked her in this. I wasn't sure if I was gonna. I have no relationship with her. I've never seen her Disney stuff, but yeah, basically, he says that, and she's in there, and she just says Peter also quit. She mentions like 2 or 3 things he quit on, and then everybody looks at her, and she's like, I'm not obsessed with Peter. I'm just observant. And something else that the movie does that's very smart is Peter is seen in the suit and stopping crime very early into the film. I did not like clock it, but if I had to guess, I would definitely say before half an hour, less than half an hour into the movie, you see him in full costume, and he's doing his thing. He's stopping criminals, and yeah. And it's actually the first time you see a little bit of this in the trailer. There's this bike thief, and like Peter goes in and gets in front of him, and he's like, "Here, hold this," and he shoots a little bit of web at the hand of the guy, and like the dude gets like hung up from from the hand. Bike is left on the ground, and then Peter's like, is this anybody's bike? And like a guy comes out of the store that they're in front of. He's like, is this your bike? And the dude doesn't even look at him. He's just, I don't have any change, because he's not like, whoa, Spider-Man. He's I don't have any change. He's not even looking at him. And Spider-Man's like, is this anybody's bike? And he ends up just having to. He writes a note that we see him having left this note that says, if this is your bike, here you go. Please don't steal this bike. Because it's like, if somebody steals the bike now, then it was practically for nothing. And the Stan Lee cameo is great. There's this bit where basically Peter is stopping this guy who's seemingly breaking into a car, but like apparently it actually is his car. It looks suspicious, but like and in stopping him, he like I think he like webs his hand to the car, which starts the car alarm because it was locked, and then he suddenly touches it, and then car alarm goes off. Several people like stick their heads out of windows. Would you cut out the noise? And like and he's like, no, I was stopping this burglar, and the guy is like yelling at one of the people in the windows, can you please tell this guy that this is my car? And just and one of the people who sticks their heads out is Stan Lee, and he's complaining about the noise, but then he spots one of the people in the other windows, like across the street or something like that, and then they started having a conversation. There hasn't been a single bad Stan Lee cameo in a Spider-Man solo movie, has there? And and very early in the film we see that Peter is not being careful enough, and he ends up, there are situations where he leaps into action too fast, and it ends up causing some damage, for example. And Ned finds out that Peter is Spider-Man very early on, so that's also not something that we have to spend a lot of time waiting for that to happen. I'm not 100% certain, but I think Dummy makes a cameo in this. It's certainly one of the robots is seen. There's this, I really liked May in this, and I wouldn't have minded more of if it weren't a movie and I had a way to contact this Aunt May, I might try to open with as corny as a line, as Mary May, because I feel like she might appreciate that. There's this part where they're like sitting there eating like Thai food, I want to say, and she's like, you're hardly touching your, I think it was called larb, and she's like, what's wrong? Too larby? Not larby enough? How many times do I have to say larb before you answer? And then like, and he does, talk to her a little bit, and then this like waiter comes up and he's like, here, have this, I forget what he serves, and she's like, we didn't order that, and he's like, oh, compliments of the house. Oh, how nice. And she doesn't really pick up on it, but Peter does, and the audience does, and it's the movie not really, it's not hiding that, yeah, this is a fairly young Aunt May, so yeah, people hit on her all the time, and Peter's like, I think he larbs you. And she also says, I larb you to Peter, so yeah. Brad and Dave, I don't think, I forget if Brad as well, but certainly Dave, were not big fans of Ned. I didn't mind him. I found most of his stuff fairly funny. There's this running thing of once he starts to, yeah, they talk about him being, about Peter being Spider-Man, and the basically Ned wants to be his ally, and he says, I want to be your guy in the chair, and yeah, I want to be sitting there on the, looking at the monitor and being like guiding you out of a building that's fallen apart or something, and I'm not going to give away whether or not he gets to be, but I enjoyed that element, certainly. And I can't tell what that note's supposed to mean. Which happens. Notes leave. That made no sense. Let's see. There's this party that Liz kind of sort of invites Peter to, and like the Ned is like saying, if that he should show up, he should put on the suit and show up as Spider-Man and surprise everyone, and so not revealing that Peter is Spider-Man, but yeah, and like he goes to this party, and Ned is like, what are you gonna be Spider-Man? And Peter like lifts his sleeve slightly to show him I'm wearing the suit underneath. And there's this thing of like Liz, apparently is kind of into Spider-Man, and there's and Peter is into Liz, so it's like, it's the mask thing, and the Mask movie. Do I go as myself, or do I go as this alter ego who is very, who really gets attention and who the girls are into? And there's this, Peter is like, as Spider-Man, he is basically watching some people do something wrong, and he's trying to figure out exactly how to approach it, and then someone calls him on his cell, and that completely gives his position away and his presence. And Ned has this hat that, like, when we first see him, he's heading into the party, and I think May is the first one who said, she's like, Ned, that is a nice hat. And he's like, thank you, it gives me confidence. And then, you know, yeah, there's the party, and at one point Ned, you know, really frustratedly tells Peter, the hat isn't working. And that's, yeah, that's such a, yeah, been there. And there's this is one of those movies where there's a thing in the climax, like a gadget, where it's mentioned very early on, and like people are like, that's, I don't think that's gonna be, no, never mind about that for now, and it gets brought up a few more times, and then at the end, okay, sure, we'll go for it. And there's this guy working for Vulture who like threatens, was that Logan Marshall Green? Whatever. Who's like, you know, he has a bad attitude and he's not taking things very seriously, so Vulture feels like, okay, I'm gonna have to let you go. And the guy is like threatening, well, maybe I'll tell your wife how you really make your money. And Vulture fires him out of a cannon into the sun. Or if you rearrange some of those words, that sentence does make sense. It's pretty badass. The dude melts. And in Atum's defense, he is like, I thought this was the anti-gravity gun. No, that one's over there. Oh. And there's this plot point of this like small energy thing that Peter picks up from some of the bad guys, and they keep returning to it, and it's a pretty good, you know, they accomplish a lot of things with this one plot point that, yeah, very nicely constructed. And you know, the decathlon, it you know, Peter tracks the some of the bad guys, and he finds out that they're near DC, and the decathlon would take him near DC, so he does jump back onto that one, and like it's kind of funny when that happens. Flash is like, oh no, Peter, you don't get to just jump in at the last second and have everybody welcome you back aboard. And then the teacher walks out and is like, oh, Peter, welcome back aboard. And he literally gives Peter Flash's seat on the, and it's like you can kind of see why Flash really can't stand Peter. You know, something like that. You know, it's not, nobody like throws Peter a parade for behavior like that, but Flash is kind of the one who voices everyone's frustration with that. And I don't think that that's like the entire dynamic. It's not that every single time Flash does something like that towards Peter that's because of something like that, but you know, you can see a little bit where he's coming from. And he is the type who does bully, and it's like he's basically this overconfident rich kid who thinks that he's better because he's rich. But the decathlon taking them to DC is one example of, you know, he's there as Peter Parker, but he's only there as Peter Parker because he wants to be there as Spider-Man, and that causes some problems. And there's there's the scene where I'm not gonna give away what decision Peter ends up making, but basically he has the choice between going to the hotel pool with Liz and others, but nevertheless with Liz, who's there in her bathing suit. The yeah, do that or do the Spider-Man thing, and yeah, and legitimately, like Liz specifically says, join us, come to the pool with us. You know, that's a, yeah, that's a very direct invitation right there, and yeah, and this is kind of the thing that Spider-Man 2 did, where, you know, here's something that Spider-Man should do, and here's a thing versus here's a thing that Peter Parker wants to do. And in this movie, that was never annoying. It was always compelling. And I'm sorry, but in Spider-Man 2, it was so frequently just annoying. And I've done more than enough videos on the rainy Spider-Man movies, so I'm not gonna get, yeah. And there's not a huge amount of the film where Peter's interacting with the AI in his suit, Karen, but most of that stuff is really, really good. It's around the time when he's like in DC that it really kicks in, and for reasons I'm not going to get into here. And yeah, basically, like, it tells him, okay, now is the right time to jump so that you'll get to the place that you're tracking them to. And there's this, it's offering to turn on certain, modes and turn off others, and there's this, it really, really wants him to use this mode called instant kill mode. And for, like, he says, okay, I'm gonna be doing some close combat. Okay, instant kill mode turned on. No, turn it off. I don't know if that's like a thing on Iron Man, maybe, because when you look at it, Iron Man is really, really quick to just decide these guys are gonna die. And don't get me wrong, a lot of the time that is because otherwise they're going to kill innocent people. But nevertheless, it is still like, you have all this amazing technology. Couldn't you just stun them? But yeah, Peter keeps turning on, and then there's like there's rapid fire mode for the web, and yeah. And I mentioned he does sometimes quip. He calls Vulture Big Bird at one point, which is, yeah, that works. And before he settles on Karen, he keeps just calling her Suit Lady, which I quite like. And then, after a while, he's like, I should give you a name, Suit Lady. I don't like calling you Suit Lady. Liz. No, wait, that's weird. No, that's wrong. Karen? You can call me Karen. Yeah. And yeah, I'm gonna save that for later. Actually, no, there's this part where he's stuck in a certain place, and so he's like, okay, let's take that course to bring me up to speed on all the stuff that the suit can do. And, being stuck there, he also talks about Liz with Karen, and, and again, this is an actual AI. It's not just like a yes-no kind of, or a database or something. No, it has a mind, and she actually helps Peter with that. And, and after talking like that for a while, he's like, how much time have we been here anyway? 37 minutes. 37 minutes! And that's, yeah, again, very teenage. If if you're stuck doing something you really don't want, it's gonna seem like forever. And after that, there's this point where Spider-Man comes very, very close to the yeah, I'm not going to give away the exact circumstance, but basically, you know, Peter is talking to Liz, and like the moment that Karen realizes it's Liz, tell her how you feel, and it's just, it's quite funny. It's that typical, like, trying to help with the love problems kind of thing. And of course, the what is said is tell her how you feel. And there's this, as you probably already know, there's this action scene in the Washington Monument, and there's actually this kind of explosion very near the tip, which seems like a little explicit. And there's this kind of the Washington Monument thing. Like there's a group of people who are, at risk, and basically, like, there's this security guard who's like trying to calm them down, and she's like, no, we can stay here for a while. We're okay. And then cuts to Karen telling Peter they cannot stay there. This is very dangerous, and the guard says we're perfectly safe. They are very much in danger. And it's a fairly straightforward, kind of obvious joke to make, but it works. And maybe it's because as part of researching Resident Evil, because I'm in a week, I'm reviewing the final chapter. Promises. I wouldn't be that surprised if there was a 7th. Anyway, which I haven't watched the movie yet, so if you do not post a comment spoiling that movie. But I do own the DVD now. But yeah, so I've just been rewatching the first couple of them, and maybe it's just because that. But the elevator really the elevator in the Washington Monument scene in this movie really reminded me of the homicidal elevator. The Red Queen, the homicidal Red Queen's elevator, and literally a character does say we're gonna die here. So yeah, not creepily, but nevertheless. And by the end of that scene, Liz is safe. And Spider-Man is right there, and Peter knows that she's into Spider-Man, and so yeah, they're very close to each other, and Karen is like, "This is your chance, kiss her, Peter." And there's you see a little bit of this in like the trailers. There are a few Captain America PSAs in this. Basically, like, the teachers will put on a video, and Cap will talk, and that's supposed to make it more exciting for people. And and one of them is actually this. It's like gym class, and the end of that video is like Cap saying, now taking over a good friend of mine, your gym teacher. And maybe I saw it wrong or remembering wrong or something, but I swear Cap pointed to like his right, and the teacher was standing to the left of the screen. Because he probably, he didn't watch it closely enough, or he forgot which side he was supposed to stand on. But it looks pretty funny. And yeah, another one of them is like detention, and it literally, like Cap saying, "So you're in detention." And he says that, maybe you were trying to be cool. You know right from wrong, so you know what you did. Maybe you were trying to be cool. Listen to a guy who was frozen in ice for 65 years. There's nothing as cool as following the rules. And then, he goes on to say something along the lines of, your body's changing. I know all about that, which is cute. And there's this, Donald Glover is not in a huge amount of this, but he is memorable for when he is there. And there's this scene where Spider-Man, like, he's there to interrogate him. And so he tells the suit, go into interrogation mode. And he doesn't actually know what this entails. But, yeah, he turns it on and he walks up and he's like, tones of the guy asking him. I forget exactly what I think it was something like it's this gun running thing. But what he doesn't realize is that this mode, like, changes his voice. So basically, he's walking up saying, where were the other guns going? And, like, it's such an obvious parody of the Bat Bale voice. And they are so just mocking how stupid that sounded, and I never really had that much of a problem with it, but this was a really funny scene nevertheless, and I understand why people do have a problem with it. But yeah, and like Donald Glover's character was saying that, dude, I've heard your voice. This is not your voice. Stop doing that. You are not doing a very good job right now. But yeah, it was very, very funny, and just the whole notion of Spider-Man putting on a scary voice to interrogate someone is just hilarious. And and there's this, Spider-Man turns off the voice and they actually have a small conversation, and Donald Glover is like, I don't want these guns in my neighborhood. So it's, yeah. And, of course, Spider-Man, he's not stupid. He starts that interrogation by webbing Donald's hand to, like, the trunk of his car. So, he's not going to be running away, and he doesn't have any, he doesn't seem to have any weapons or anything. And he is like, yeah, they have this conversation, and it ends up kind of going Spider-Man's way. And Donald's like, I helped you, so you're gonna let me go, right? And he's like, no, that web's gonna dissolve by itself in 2 hours. No, you gotta cut me down. I've got ice cream. You're a criminal, So you're gonna stay there for a little bit. Just, bye, criminal. And it's yeah, that's Peter Parker's Spider-Man right there. He's like, I'm not gonna cut you free. You're a criminal, but thank you for helping me. And we see, May worried about Peter. She doesn't know that he's Spider-Man, but she can tell that he's taking a lot of time away from really important stuff, and she wants to know why, and she's worried about him. I already said that, didn't I? And, there's, hypothetically, if there was a part of the movie where we maybe see Peter spending more time, in class and such, and you actually see that it helps, his grades improve, and yeah, he's doing better. And Peter's date for homecoming is a huge deal to him and thus to us. And there's actually this really, like, after he gets a date, he like goes to Aunt May and he's like, "You gotta help me," and we get this really cute little montage of, you know, her teaching him a bunch of stuff that he's gonna need, you know, how to tie what a Windsor knot or whatever it's called, and like dancing, and it's really cute to see, you know, Marisa Tomei dancing a little bit, and Tom Holland, who is a dancer in real life, you know, doing this little awkward kind of sort of imitation of that, and she's like correcting, you know, helping make sure that that's definitely not what you want to do. And let's see. That is more or less. Now, Film Brain already made this point, but it bears repeating now. The Washington Monument and the Staten Island Ferry are two really standout action set pieces and the best action scenes, and some of the other actions, you know, the climax is okay, but not amazing. And I do think that they did a pretty good job of the action does not feel like it's out of one of the Raimi Man movies or Amazing Spider-Man 1 or 2. You know, ideally, you should be able to, people should very, you know, if you show someone a clip from a Spider-Man movie of like an action scene, we should be able to very quickly tell which continuity is this, because they are distinct from each other. And yeah, this one does a good job. And that is more or less the Michelle does not say or do very much, but I found it to all be memorable. I feel like honestly, I don't think there was any character that I personally really minded in this, that I was like, I wish I had seen less of them, or that where I'm like, I'm gonna forget what that thing they did or said in no time. I would maybe say someone like Liz maybe could have had more screen time, but then again, she does so well with what screen time she does have, so. Now, that is it for non-spoilery. Yes. Excuse me. On plot. Similar to other, you know, other trailers for these movies, the second and third trailer gives way too much. You know, if you haven't already watched the second and third trailer for this movie, you know, hold off on watching them until you've watched, excuse me, the movie itself. Now, as others have pointed out, you know, this very much has a John Hughes vibe. It's very much a high school movie. I've only watched The Breakfast Club, and only once, but it, you know, everybody knows the style of these movies, and yeah, but this, and I would say this is as good at that as The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is at being a classic comic book in live-action movie form. And, you know, I really appreciate that they finally got this aspect of Spider-Man right, because Spider-Man started out a typical high school boy. You know, the X-Men went to a private school. Previous teen heroes were usually sidekicks to the adult heroes, such as Batman and Superman's ones. You know, the 60s saw a number of teen heroes, a number of them being very directly relatable in one or more ways. You know, a lot of them, their body starts changing in ways they didn't expect when they became teens, and they have to deal with that, and it can be both a good and a bad thing, so, like puberty. And, you know, Spider-Man, again, you know, the X-Men, you have the sort of private school element, which the majority of people can't really relate to as such, and that's kind of you know, I'm not saying that Spider-Man is better as a concept than the X-Men. They accomplish different things, but when you're looking at, you know, the X-Men literally go to a school where everybody around them knows that they have powers. There's no need for secret identities that are secret from each other. Whereas Peter Parker, at the end of the day, he has to go back to school after, you know, tomorrow is another school day. So now, there are a lot of issues experienced primarily or only by teenagers, and they make for great fiction and other creative expression to explore. But in the wrong hands, they get obnoxious, whiny, and I don't think that really happens here. I feel like they did a good job of focusing on these issues and taking them seriously. You know, these issues include the adults don't understand anything about you or your situation. They don't seem to want to. They don't empathize with your priorities and problems. I mean, I see this from people that I really respect and consider smart, such as Lindsay Ellis. Brad Jones and his friends sometimes do it too. Eh? I'm just kidding. Mostly. Once you're out of high school, you'll never see these people again. Yeah, but the scars may last a lifetime. Teen years last like dog years. They never seem to end. And you can't necessarily establish a different role in college or jobs than you had in high school if people perceive you to be weak. Rules don't make sense. There are huge and sometimes impossible expectations from peers and adults. It's hard to break out of an assigned role. And I have been accused of myself of not having matured emotionally past this teenage stage. Whatever, takes one to know one. This was written by 6 writers, one of them being John Watts, and some of them being actors more than writers, according to IMDb Glance. And yeah, you know, so comedy writers, but you know, can't spell MCU without humor. Some people say it's, you know, tries too hard to be funny, and too much of the time, you know, wants to be funny and such. I see what they mean. Personally, I laughed at almost every single joke, and I never felt like a scene got bogged down with jokes. They never. It's possible that originally they had more jokes in the different scenes, and then they just went on a darling killing spree, and was like, okay, we have to take out every single joke that isn't great. And I feel like they succeeded if that was how the process went. Because, yeah, like, a scene will have just a couple of really good jokes, and then they move on. You know, it just, yeah, it didn't. Again, I really, really love Wonder Woman. I continue to love Wonder Woman. I really hope that they give Patty Jenkins as much influence as possible on the future of the DCEU now that she's why it has one. But I do kind of feel like a lot of scenes in that movie, they just really just try to squeeze every single joke they could out of these scenes and these characters, and it just I was with it for a while, but then I kind of stopped being into the humor, and it just kind of kept going. And I really want to laugh during movies, like, it's a movie that has a lot of darkness to it, so you have to have some levity in there as well. But it just, the yeah, it felt kind of forced, and I don't think that ever happened here, but to my, not in my opinion. Some people say this is like a Disney or Nickelodeon, it's too much for kids, it's like an after-school special. I see what they mean. I don't quite agree with it, though. I can definitely see, and it very much could have been. I will say there are a lot of little jokes and situations where it feels kind of Disney, and the relationship between Peter and the other team characters is arguably fairly a Disney TV show. Now, I've seen at least one review that points out that there's really too much collateral damage at the hands of Spider-Man, and Tony kind of accepts it a lot of the way, despite the events of Civil War. I can't really argue with that, but I do think that it's worth noting it's very difficult to get entirely away from collateral damage in action blockbusters today. There are, if you go back, there are a lot of action movies that are considered classics, rightly so, that don't have a lot of collateral damage. But that's just not really the way movies are made today. It's just stuff like 9/11 and the prevalence of terrorist bombings today. I'm not saying it's right, but I think it's difficult to get away from, having a lot of explosions, having a lot of buildings destroyed, and that is something the movie does not, it doesn't feel like it's basically one of the main Avengers members films, because those have had crazy collateral damage, especially recently, but some of them had it from right away. But yeah, this is the ground perspective of the MCU, so yeah. And briefly, as I reviewed this on Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 94% average rating, which is certified fresh. A 7.7, sorry, 94% on Rotten Tomatoes. The average rating being 7.7 out of 10, with 191 fresh reviews and only 13 rotten ones. Moving on, cast. Other than the Iron Man film actors, Michael Keaton and Marisa Tomei, I don't know these actors, singers, and dancers from anywhere else. Now, Tom Holland as Peter Parker or Spider-Man. He's spot on. He's got the awkwardness, the dorkiness, the fast talking, the he's excitable. Some say that, too odd and too frequently odd, and that's kind of true, but that's, again, that is something I will definitely say. If you watch the trailers and you feel like, wow, these characters are a little annoying from their characterization in the trailers, and I don't really want to watch something that's just about teenagers, yeah, then you're going to be annoyed by this movie. That's pretty much, but I'm sorry, then you're going to be annoyed by a proper Spider-Man story, because Spider-Man, and again, I've read a bunch of the comics where Peter's an adult. He's teaching college, so I'm aware that he eventually got there. But classic Peter Parker, the initial appeal, the whole point is this is a teenager, this is a high school student, and I've been reading as many as I had time for, basically, of the reviews, and I see people from non-Western countries saying that Spider-Man is a huge deal in their country too, because everyone can relate to Spider-Man. Basically, if you cannot relate to Spider-Man, it's because you're not a teenager yet, or you've forgotten what it was like to be a teenager. And it is really cool that Tom Holland is actually able to do a lot of the stunts because he has a background in dancing and gymnastics. And that also, I mean, more so than the others, in this I really feel like that's Tom Holland under the suit. That's Peter Parker in a suit. And he's trying to put on being Spider-Man, but it's him. He's not, Peter Parker is not an actor. He's a kid who really wants to live up to the expectations, but he's not capable of transforming who he is. And yeah. And I really appreciate that between the fights, between the fights taking place between Spider-Man and the villain, Peter is actually working on trying to find the villain, trying to find out how to stop him and such. So like Amazing Spider-Man, but unlike Raimi Spider-Man. And that's also, I mean, it's not hugely complex, and certainly the audience knows from almost right away what's going on with the Vulture. It's not a mystery. It's not a mystery story but Peter figures out what's going on with the weapon smuggling, and he goes in and tries to stop it. And of course, he doesn't have the experience, he doesn't have the knowledge of the suit needed to do this, or at least to do this without doing some, dealing some collateral damage. But, that's part of it. And yeah, Tomb. Okay, here it says yes, his name is Adrian Toomes. Still not gonna go with the Tomb. He runs this New York salvaging company, and he has a suit consisting of mechanical wings forged from Chitauri technology. Oh, right, the Chihuahuas. And I really appreciate... I wasn't sure they'd be able to make Vulture look cool, but they did. When United abuses their passengers, sooner or later, people find other ways to fly. But I really appreciate that they actually did give him several aspects of the classical look. When you really look at the wings, in part, they are like those of a vulture. When you see them properly spread out, they look like the wings of a vulture. And when a Tomb walks around, not in the suit, he has the thing with the fur, just like in the in the comics, he has the thing with the fur when he's got the wings on, and that's not so much the case here. But they worked it in, and he wears it well. That's the thing with a lot of these. I'd say the MCU has been doing really well with that, almost entirely consistently. They make the look fit the actor and today's expectations. And yeah, we finally have a live-action Spider-Man film where there isn't even a single villain who's like split personality or otherwise crazy. A Tomb is not crazy, not at all. He's just very determined and equipped. Some said that his motives could be better, and it seems like a stretch that he decides he's going to be a supervillain to support his family. And it's the thing of you need him to go there because the movie needs a villain. I kind of felt like it was just the final straw that damage control meant, okay, fine, you're not gonna, you know, he says, it's one of the first lines he has, the world's changing, boys, time we change too. He's basically saying, okay, fine, I tried it their way, I tried to play it the way that I was supposed to, I tried to be a good hard worker and stay within my field, stay within my, you know, work within my means and such, and they muscle me out with, you know, yeah, it's very much this thing of, you were doing really well, now you're fired and your job is going to be done by someone else. And in this case it's actual people, where in the real world it's more, or rather it's people who live there, where in real life it's more frequently, we're going to move the company to a completely different country where we can, you know, pay less. In this case it's not moving it to a different country, but it is, yeah, they're taking the work away from these hard workers who've done nothing wrong. And I suppose, yeah, there is somewhat of a personal relationship between Spider-Man and the villain. You know, if there hadn't been, it would be the first time in the 6 solo films. And similar to some of the others, Atum is kind of what Peter could become. You know, both of them are frustrated with Tony Stark. You know, Tony Stark won't, you know, he built this thing in the cave with a box of scraps, but he won't let us do the thing that we know we're supposed to do, and that's working. That we clearly, if he would just get out of the way, but nope, he has to go in and control everything because he thinks he's better than everyone. And, you know, yeah, it works. It's a good, you know, they keep doing this in the, I don't know if that's going to be a thing in the continued MCU Spider-Man movies, but yeah, you know, there's some kind of relationship there each time in the films. Now, Loki, Ultron, Caecilius, and the villain of the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 are memorable, and I'm glad to say Vulture is as well. And he is in a lot of the film, though he's not in costume as much as you might think, but Michael Keaton is in a bunch of scenes, and he does stuff. You know, he's not just, we're not just waiting for him to eventually get to something. But yeah, you know, a lot of MCU films have problems with villain presence and villains being compelling, while the Spider-Man movies have lots of compelling villains already. And yeah, here again, a compelling villain. Tom Holland's Spider-Man is going to be a great thing in the MCU from, yeah, onwards. And yes, since Tony Stark prevented the guy who becomes Vulture from making money off superhero collateral damage, and that is what specifically what leads him to becoming Vulture. So far, the only movie Iron Man is in where he didn't cause or contribute to the big problem is the Avengers, the first movie, since he had nothing to do with Loki and the Tesseract. And, you know, he couldn't have, without, say, Thor and or maybe Hulk, you know, who wouldn't have been there, have stopped Loki from stealing it, even if he had been at the base in the opening. Of course, if his building hadn't been, what was it, energy self-sufficient, there was some reason, maybe Loki would have had more trouble opening the portal wide enough. So I guess we can say that he is in every single Tony, you know, not every single Tony Stark movie, but every single movie that has Iron Man, that wherein Tony puts on the suit at some point, he is at fault, at least in part, for the problems that, yeah. Now, I don't know Director John Watts from anything else, but yeah, he pointed out that, you know, Spider-Man's a regular kid who becomes a superhero. It's got to be a bunch of regular people who become supervillains. And Keaton pointed out that there are parts of a tomb where you go, you know what, I might see his point. And then the at least one of the producers said he's like a dark Tony Stark. And a businessman with a family. He wants to look out for his kids. He's got sort of a Tony Soprano mentality. He doesn't have these big delusions of grandeur where he wants to take over the world or replace the government or even defeat the Avengers or anything. He just wants his shot at the good life. And as others have pointed out, Keaton went from Batman to Birdman to another Birdman. And the ground level perspective for the whole film is in part inspired by, John C. Reilly's Nova Corman, Roman Day from Guardians of the Galaxy 1. Unfortunately, not Guardians of the Galaxy 2. And Jon Favreau's Happy Hogan. I'm really glad he's back. And this is probably the funniest he's been and the most, like, the best character dynamic. He's fun when he's bouncing off, well, let's see, it's not that much Tony, but it was especially in movie 2 it was Black Widow, in movie Iron Man 3 it was Pepper, and then a little bit Tony, and that's basically it. But here basically he's the direct contact between Peter and Tony doesn't talk directly to Peter all that much. It's usually goes through Happy, and he's not very happy about that. He's like, oh, seriously, this kid, just calm down, breathe. And literally one of the first things, you like I mentioned, you very early on see Peter like stopping crime and such, and after he's done a little bit of that, he calls Happy and leaves this message on the answering machine where he gives an exact like report, like it's he thinks that Happy is going to like sit down and like, I don't know, take notes of this, or like, okay, I mean, you did a pretty good, you stopped X amount of criminals Monday, but then on Wednesday you didn't stop quite as many. I don't know, I just, B plus, you know what, I'm feeling generous, B plus, but just keep your nose to the grindstone, and just, dude, he doesn't care. He's really not gonna care about how many bike thieves you stopped, or yeah. And he has, Favreau has more screen time than Tony, and is fed up with Peter bugging him to let him join the Avengers, or at least test to join. And Michelle, one of Parker's classmates, very smart, very intellectual, always in her books, because when Hollywood gives us characters not conventionally attractive, they nerd up someone who, in real life, is conventionally attractive. And Michelle was not intended to be a love interest for Parker. The actress calling her very dry, awkward, intellectual, because she's so smart, she just feels like she doesn't need to talk to people, so she comes off weird. And yeah, to me, she's very cool because she's deep, she's always thinking about something, always reading. And Watt likened the character Ali Sheedy's Alison Reynolds from The Breakfast Club, or Linda Cardellini's Lindsay Weir from Freaks and Geeks, which I didn't watch. And Marisa Tomei's Aunt May Parker, Peter's aunt. And, first reports of Tomei's casting caused backlash on social media, with comic book fans opining that the actress was too young and attractive to portray the character, especially after the character has previously been depicted by actors older actress is older than Tomei, and yeah, if she's the sister of Peter's dead mother, she shouldn't be 1 or 2 generations ahead. And Tomei did, suggest that they age her up, but they said no. The in Civil War, she said, "I hope you got a few good licks in," and seems to mean it after he returns from the airport fight. She bakes. She comes off as your mom's friend or, well, sister. Maybe not quite your mom, so fitting. With each new movie continuity of Spider-Man, she's become increasingly much of an actual human being, less of just an image. She seriously did start out as a Hallmark card, her and Ben both. And I realize that's fairly true to the comic, but you have to make some changes for the film medium. And Aunt May doesn't quite convey to Peter life lessons that work thematically with the film, like Raimi's trilogy and Amazing Spider-Man 2. Doesn't get corny or preachy, and they don't feel the need to contrive her into being important to the climax, like in Amazing 2. And Tony Stark, he is Peter's mentor in this, but careful, Terrence Howard's roadie also called Tony a mentor, and he's only in the one MCU film. He might get recast. And apparently Peter was the small child in a toy Iron Man mask saved by Tony from one of the Hammer Vanco robots in the climax of Iron Man 2. So Peter has looked up to him since then, and more since then, before 2 is proven by him already having the toy mask and glove. And this has been confirmed by Tom Holland, but it's not, unless I missed it, it's not actually in this movie but yeah. And that was a theory that people started floating around even back then, because it would make sense to have, if it's going to be a few movies before we get a Spider-Man, you might as well start with a Peter Parker who's a child. And, Iron Man is in the movie because he's the MCU's fattest cash cow. If they can make Stark a big part of the first Captain America movie, they can make the main Stark a big part of the first Spider-Man film in the MCU. He is not in all that much of it, and, MCU Iron Man is never forgettable. He's dynamic, he commands attention, even in otherwise boring Iron Man 2. He does not take charge of this film, but he does somewhat take charge of the few scenes he is in. But it is very much Peter Parker's movie. But Iron Man does do stuff. It's not like Ghost Rider, where the powerful mentor does nothing. But yeah, he's in very little of the movie. You see most of what he does in the movie in the trailers. And the one shot where, Spider-Man's swinging, Iron Man's flying, everybody, I too thought, that would mean that they had action scenes together. That doesn't happen at all. I get to keep the suit. Why not? Doesn't fit me. I guess that's why J. Jonah Jameson was reluctant to let Tobey Maguire have it back. And I do think it makes a ton of sense to have Tony recruits Spider-Man, Peter Parker Spider-Man, into the Civil War in the comics as well. And in the MCU, this Peter Parker Spider-Man is only just starting to be Spider-Man. In the Civil War comics, he wasn't. That wasn't the first time, but it makes a ton of sense to then have, Iron Man continue to be a big part, even after Civil War. And and there's this thing of, is Tony comfortable with being a mentor? And he's not known for his maturity and responsibility. And I do think they did a really good job with that, and Tony is funny and very witty and fast-talking again. And Jacob Batalon, I don't know if that's how I pronounce it, portrays Parker's best friend, Ned, who he refers to as a complete gamer. And I'm relieved to say it doesn't feel like an ignorant stereotype of that kind of person. And they used Ned Leeds as a basis for the character, but it's not clear if this is Ned Leeds or a different Ned who's very similar to Ned Leeds. And yeah, basically he's also very excitable, and he's super excited about Peter being Spider-Man, and he asks a bunch of questions. And again, I get why Brad Jones and Dave found that annoying, but I didn't. I will say that it's fairly one note, as they also say. Now, Peter in this is more interested in Liz Allen of the girls in school. She's the one he's into, so he, I had wondered before I realized that was the case, that maybe he would need some Mary Jane to cope with all this pressure, or meet and befriend the fellow high school student, Miss Watson. But yeah, Liz Allen, very cool, hasn't been in live action films before now, and she's black, giving us an interracial main romantic relationship and a black female main character. And I'm very glad to say that she is not Mary Jane obnoxious. She's not quite Gwen Stacy awesome either, but not every female character does need to be. As long as she's not Mary Jane obnoxious, she doesn't need to be Gwen Stacy awesome. And we just had the Gwen Stacy awesome. Again, you want to make sure it's distinct from what's come before, especially Gwen Stacy. That was 3 years ago only, on a single movie ago. You definitely gotta, yeah. And I suppose that's about it for that. She's smart and sweet, basically. And yeah, she's let's see. Yeah, the actress herself says, she's type A personality, and that's, yeah. And they have really good chemistry. I wanted to see them end up together. I wouldn't say that I fell for her to the same extent that I fell for Gwen Stacy, nor for their relationship to the same extent as the Amazing Spider-Man relationship, but nevertheless, I cared about the romantic relationship, and that's way too frequently not the case in movies that, yeah. And, Liz Allen does know who Peter is. It's not, in the first Raimi Spider-Man film, Mary Jane wouldn't notice Peter even if his hair was on fire. And I've already kind of talked about Flash Thompson. Yeah, classically, he's a physically imposing jock. But now he's a rich, smug kid to reflect modern views of bullying. And there are a couple of shocker characters. I'm not going to go too much into them. Jennifer Connelly provides the voice of Karen, and she may become a separate AI like Vision in the comics. The character that she may play here becomes romantically involved with Vision, and yeah, I could see how that could work out. Like with Jarvis, there's some personality there, and I think they did a good job of, she doesn't feel like she's just Jarvis with a gender swap. Same as Friday doesn't feel like just Jarvis with a gender swap. These do have different personalities. This, yeah, I appreciate that. Now, let's see. I've already mentioned the Captain America, cameo. Moving on, action/abilities. Where Raimi Spider-Man fought a lot with his fists, and Amazing Spider-Man was tactical, using webs when it makes sense. That was the Mark Webman approach. In both this movie and the Civil War fight scene, it's very much the Amazing approach, and yeah, greatly appreciated. And the film brain also points this out. Peter can't just web onto something if there's nothing to web onto. And at one point in this movie, he's in this kind of like park golf course, so there's nothing up high for his web to latch onto, so he just has to run through it, where in the previous films somehow he could always swing. And throughout the film, Peter is figuring out new abilities in it, similar to when you get a new phone. Relating to the web he can shoot, whether or not he's floating, there's a drone. And this is a way to make the web use and Peter's abilities in general distinct from the other 5 films, and like I already mentioned, I feel like they accomplished that. Now, some say that there were some worries that it might rely too much on it and make it feel like an Iron Man film, just a bunch of tech in the hands of this young male protagonist, where Peter Parker is a very distinct character from Tony Stark, and I don't feel like it ever got to feel just like Iron Man. Yeah. And Tony's programmed tons of abilities into the suit, but he's limited how many of them Peter can use because he's worried Peter will make mistakes. And at one point, Ned hacks the suit and unlocks the rest of the abilities. And and maybe at one point in the movie, Tony will take the suit back, because showing how Peter's abilities work and then taking away some of that worked so well in The Amazing Spider-Man 1. What? I meant that. Sorry if it sounded sarcastic. And this is somewhat similar to Iron Man in the MCU, every so often bringing out new abilities, tech, and such. And I find it worked quite well in the movie. Now, the Spidey sense is less present. In Civil War, he kind of hinted that it's very strong, so he used the Spider-Man suit lenses to focus it by decreasing it. There are times in this movie where it really seems like he should get warnings from the Spidey sense, and it doesn't happen. I don't know. Some have gone as far as to say, oh, what, did they forget this major power of his? I don't know exactly what the idea is. I feel like it would maybe be a good idea to explain in the next movie Spider-Man is in, or at least the next major Spider-Man solo movie. It gives some kind of explanation as to why we didn't really see the Spidey sense in this one, because it really, it kind of stands out as, yeah. I don't think they forgot. They probably just felt... I feel like I heard one of them say in an interview that it was such a big part in the other movies that they didn't want to do it over again. And yeah, I mean, it really is. So, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, the suit, Peter has trouble figuring out all the abilities and such. Peter will press a key and it does the thing he didn't expect it to, and that's bad for him, so like playing Assassin's Creed. Short movie review. Spider-Man Homecoming short movie review. Peter Parker returns to high school after the airport fight in Civil War, and he has a lot of trouble returning to that. He really wants to escape his boring teen life where he's awkward and overlooked, and Tony Stark very much wants him to get more experience before he goes full superhero. The movie is more... The Spider-Man stuff is not as compelling as the Peter Parker stuff, but I don't think that's a problem, because we've had a lot of really compelling Spider-Man stuff already, and the Spider-Man stuff is compelling. But this is the first time where I cared deeply about Peter Parker, the high school student, which is something the other movies, you know, get out of the way as fast as they possibly can, which is a substantial mistake. This is very much a high school movie, and obviously if you're not into that, you're not going to like it. But if you're not into that, what are you doing watching a Spider-Man movie? You know, that's like saying, you know, if you watch an Iron Man movie, you might be annoyed that he's so much of a playboy. You know, that's the character. The 3D really doesn't add much. The action varies, and definitely the director is more comfortable with the character relationships and the comedy. It is genuinely funny. It doesn't go too far in search of joke. Moving on to thoughts. Please note that this video contains spoilers for the subject and the series and/or franchise leading up to this entry. Starting with plot. I am very, very glad that the movie does not have a funeral scene. I forget which of the Walker brothers pointed this out, but there are already way too many funeral scenes in Spider-Man movies. You know, you've got the first one with Norman, the third one with Harry, then Amazing 1, it's Captain Stacy, Amazing 2, it's Gwen Stacy. You know, there's no one in 2. That one did almost have a wedding, making 4 funerals and a wedding up to this point. Every Osborn and Stacy gets a funeral, but no Octavius, though. And, you know, so far, every solo Spider-Man film has had the following trope in the climax, and appeal to the humanity of the villain either by himself or by Peter. Of course, in each case, without it, it might be a lesser film. And here, you kind of have it before Vulture breaks down the, you know, breaks down the building on top of Peter. Both of them kind of make their case. And I'm really glad that this broke the trend that Amazing Spider-Man, you know, both Amazing Spider-Man movies, a character close to Peter dies, and at the end, he listens to a recording of them talking, and what they say is poignant. And this Spider-Man does not lose the mask a lot without being recognized. and there's an arc in Reactor for Peter and Tony and their relationship, and we believe that, at the end of this, Peter could be part of Infinity War, and that Tony would let him. We already knew that he would be in it. It's not about whether it's purely about whether or not that feels credible. And previous Spider-Man films, what's in danger tends to be one or more dozens of people within New York, and I mean that is basically the case here as well. You have the weapon smuggling. Yeah, it basically, if Peter didn't manage to stop Vulture at the end of the movie, he would leave. He would get away with all this stuff, and he'd be able to sell these guns, and they would get a lot of people killed. And you have the Pepper Potts cameo. I didn't know. I read like earlier that and tried to not think about where she might show up. Someone didn't spoiler tag that, which is a little annoying, but yeah, I quite liked the cameo. Now, let's see. Notes taken during the film. Let's see. I thought it was kind of cute, Ned meaning to help Peter, they overhear, you've got the girls playing, what's it called again, FMK, I want to say, and there's like, well, I guess I would marry, and I would kill Hulk, and then, what about Spider-Man? And Liz is like, oh, I like Spider-Man, and then Ned just blurts out, Peter knows Spider-Man. And it's kind of, and I don't know if this was intentional, but it did kind of make me think of all the appropriate jokes that have been told about the whole, which is in the first Raimi Man movie, and the second Amazing Spider-Man. I am his photographer, so I do know him for, in Amazing 2, it's not him who says that, but it's other people, certainly Harry says, you take his picture, so you must know him. And now I'd heard that Michelle was going to turn out to be related to a tomb, but then it turns out to be that Liz is, and for some reason, I don't understand why people sometimes have this problem, Brad and Dave, I think mainly Dave, of Cinema Snob, was like, just tell me that he's like the stepfather. Well, why do you care so much? Yeah, I guess he's the stepfather because, as he points out, his last name is Toombs, her last name is Allen, so yeah, I guess stepfather. So what? You can piece this together yourself. I guess I can understand why you have a problem if it was like, nope, I had sex with her mother, and that's my daughter, and yet my last name is different from her last name. That would be a little, okay, why even that? But yeah, probably married into the family. So what? We can, piece that together ourselves. We don't need it. I don't need it confirmed. I don't know why you do. I like that. I really like that at that point he became such a dad, and like, because it does fit with the rest of the movie. He's a nice guy when he's around people that don't treat him like crap. He's he's a nice guy to the people he works with, so he's a nice guy as a father. You know, he's got a little bit of that, you know, it's that 8 simple rules thing where like, oh please call me sensei, don't sit in that chair, not in that chair, and you know I like the thing with right answer, also the right answer. The thing, you look pale. Would you like a drink? Scotch? I'm not old enough to drink. Right answer. And Peter's so nervous, oh, is that a corsage? And he's like, here, take it. And Atum gradually piecing together that Peter Parker is Spider-Man with the oh, you keep disappearing, and then yeah. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, Vulture, he is such a dad, and he's been telling us, I do this for my family. For some reason, and generally we didn't stop to think, I guess he does have a family. We don't really see it, but yeah, he's doing this because he loves these people, and clearly he does. Now, I liked Ned as the guy in the chair. I quite liked, Peter first time driving, and the, was that a reference to the first Amazing Spider-Man? Didn't he mention that exact same fish that they had at the dinner? But yeah, he's like, no, trust me, I know when it's not fresh. That was not fresh. And Spider-Man's like, oh, I'm gonna need your car, but sir, it's not really my car, it's my father's car. And then smash cut, and he's driving away, and he immediately like hits something, and Flash is like, oh, my dad's gonna kill me, and just yeah, he's driving for the first time, and Ned is like, well, did you really take Flash's car? Yeah, that's awesome, that's awesome. And the Ned is caught at the computer, and he closes the laptop, and he's like, what are you doing in here? I'm looking at porn. And I quite like the whole eat their table scraps monologue. It really, yeah. And I like that, there at the end we see the suit fly without tombs in the... And it's, again, I do think that it's getting a little old, this thing of, I was just keeping you talking, because it's a thing that in comics, people stop and monologue in the middle of these scenes, but yeah, okay, we get, no, I was just keeping you talking until this happened. And the bit where Peter's weighed down by all this, the building on top of him after Vulture, buries him, that's right out of the comic. That's actually, and I'd already read it, don't get me wrong, but that's one of the stories in the book up there, which I guess you can't see from here, but some of the most iconic of the Spider-Man stories. So it has that one. It has the death of Gwen Stacy, and the follow-up with the Goblin. Yeah, and I feel like they did a pretty good job of using that scene for Now the climax in the jet with all these Avenger tech weapons, and I thought it was okay. I do feel like it did a pretty good job of yet again Peter struggling to accept what his powers can and can't do. How far can what can Because if you're that far up and you don't have wings, yeah, it's gonna be super dangerous. Now, I quite like that Spider-Man saved Vulture after the explosion there at the end. And he does go and apologize to Liz, and Liz doesn't just let him off the hook because she likes him. And really, you could say that, you know, the Peter, once he realized that Liz's father was a tomb, he did kind of, that was the last time he kind of made the choice of his responsibility to Spider-Man more than his desire for Peter Parker to be happy. Because, I mean, Vulture basically said, you know, if you leave me alone, you can date my daughter. You know, show her a good time, not too good of a time, which is such a dad thing to say in that situation. But yeah, he's like, I'm not going to hurt you, and I want her to be happy. You seem to make her happy, you know. But Peter's like, I know that if I don't stop him, a lot of people are going to be hurt. And I do also, I really appreciate it. And again, it's a Spider-Man movie thing. There at the end, yes, this was a villain, but he had family. There were people he cared about that are now hurt because they know that that's what he did. You know, it's not, Spider-Man doesn't go out and stop the big bad guy and then everybody's just happy. No, there are repercussions. You know, everyone who does something bad has someone close to them, someone who cares about them, and who is hurt by finding out that they did something wrong. I really didn't particularly like the, you know, oh, you can call me MJ, you know, that was actually, like, I want to say Nerdist News were the ones who were like, you know, oh, is that Michelle? Does that mean she's going to be MJ? And they're like, there are characters named Michelle in the comic book. Her name is Michelle. I promise you, her name is Michelle. You know, it's not Mary Jane. You know, again, Dave and Brad Jones said, you know, like The Dark Knight Rises with Robin, but, you know, yeah, not a fan in this. Yeah. Let's see. I did think it was really cool that Peter got to go to the Avengers building there at the end. And, you know, the new suit presented is indeed, you know, when I watched the, you know, in Civil War, I mean, we know from the trailers, okay, it's not the Iron Spider. He's not going to get the Iron Spider suit to fight in the airport scene at the very least. And then there at the end of the movie, we have this tease of, oh, there's more technology to this than he might know about. You know, it was, and I want to say Kevin Feige, someone, I just looked it up. You know, they were like, no, we gotta have the classic suit in the first Spider-Man solo film that we make. So yeah, you know. But then here at the end, if you'd like, here you have the Iron Spider suit, and it looks exactly right. And I just, and then he turns it down, but he's gonna be wearing it in an upcoming movie, maybe even an Infinity War. That would make sense, certainly, because Tony is like, here, you can have it. Which, yeah, for people who don't know, in the comics, in Civil War, when Iron Man recruits Spider-Man, he gives him the Iron Spider suit. And Peter actually says no, and, like, yeah, that was, because he realized he has to be, you know, keep close to the ground some longer. And then it's like, you know, this was a test, wasn't it? There are no people out there. Oh yeah, totally. And then the door opened, and we knew that was gonna be, we knew that he was gonna say it's just a test, there's no one out there, and that there actually was going to be people out there. But then, you know, Pepper walks in, and I'm like, thank you for bringing Pepper. I don't know exactly who made this happen. I don't know who to thank. Is it Gwyneth Paltrow? Is it her agent? Kevin Feige? Writers? I don't know, but thank you all so much, because I really dig having her back. And then you know, well, I mean, do you still have the engagement ring and this? Are you kidding? I've been holding off this since 2008, and you know, the ring bearer, he tosses it to him. It's like, oh, we're gonna need bigger news than this. Of course, she's gonna, yeah, make the joke about that, but that, and I, some people might be like, oh, come on. After this entire movie, after nothing building up to this, after her only showing up for a few seconds, we have the marriage thing. Yeah, but it's been built up in, you know, 4 movies, 3 Iron Man solo films, and the first Avengers movie. You know, yeah, it's yeah. And, you know, then there at the end, Peter takes off the mask. Stop taking off the mask in your room before you're sure that no one can see. But anyway, you know, and May's then there, what the? And then smash cut, yeah. Which is also, I mean, this is the only one of the ones where she will then clearly know that, yeah. Unless, I don't know, Iron Man amnesia kisses her or something. The mid-credit scene, yeah, that's quite, you know, you've got you've got Scorpion going up to the Vulture saying, I've got some friends on the outside. Do you think, let's keep it simple, just you and I and 4 more people. You know who Spider-Man is, don't you? Let's get together and cut his head off. And yeah, nice, you know, Sinister Six, which, I mean, that's the Sony thing, that's not the MCU thing as far as I understand, but yeah, that's still pretty cool. And the post-credit scene, you know, it's by now, they're making jokes out of a lot of these post-credit scenes, but I will say this was one of the very best. You know, we have, at this point, it's the 3rd in the movie where Cap comes on screen and says, you know, so this is a PSA for one of you young people, and this time he actually takes up the entire, he takes up the entire screen. He's not just, on a TV, and yeah, you know, and he literally says, you know, patience is one of the most important skills in a soldier. Sometimes it can suck, and sometimes it can feel like you wasted your time. How many more of these things do I have to do? That's, yeah, that's, I like it. That's, I laughed a lot. And I guess I should briefly say, I didn't really feel like there was resolution to the Flash Gordon thing, and I don't know, maybe you didn't really need any, but yeah. And with that, cannot wait to see more Spider-Man in the MCU, and Excelsior! Please comment, thumbs up, and subscribe for more content.